Hey y'all, sorry about the delay there. I've had the flu the last couple of days, or at least what I categorize, I guess, as a flu. I've been kind of sick, upset stomach, running a little bit of a fever, things like that, and it's put me kind of back. Anyway, I wanted to kind of get caught up with you guys. Get a few of these chapters out. Wanted to say thank you guys so much. We have reached and surpassed 900 subscribers, so that's the kind of benchmark when this comes out for the future. This is like, July of 2019. And we've finally surpassed 1,000 subscribers. I wanted to thank everyone who has subscribed, everyone who's been a part of this growth, been a part of this help meet of me to be able to continue to try to get over some of the disability that I have with reading, and to be able to also get such a wonderful author out there that you guys need to purchase his books. If for some reason you haven't already, you need to go get these books so that you can read along with me, or that you can share the love of reading with someone else and be able to move forward with that. Let me go ahead here though. This is Jim Butcher's Turncoat, which is book 11 of the Dresden Files. We here are on chapter 37. So let me go ahead here and you guys grab your copies of the book, share and subscribe to this channel, and if you don't like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. If you do, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, but go ahead and leave comments down below, and we can kind of work on some of the things that maybe you guys say need work on, or we can keep going with some of the other things that you guys say need to keep going. I know I ramble sometimes on this, so I like the people that decided to go ahead and pin in the comments when I actually get to the reading. Let me go ahead here though and jump into, looks like chapter 37 for you guys. I didn't return to the dock by the same route I'd taken to the tower. There was a much shorter, easier way down what looked like a sheer rock wall. It proved to have an ancient narrow gully worn into the stone, almost completely hidden by brush. The gully's floor had a thin layer of silt in it, leaving little room for plants to grow, and was as easy to traverse as a sidewalk, even in the dark. Following it brought me back to the island's shoreline in half the time it had taken to go up. I didn't wonder how I'd known about the path until I stepped out of the woods and saw the dock again. I hadn't been that way before. I hadn't known it existed. Yet when I decided to take that trail, the knowledge had come to me as completely and immediately as if I had lived there for years. Pure information. I paused and looked around me. I knew not to walk directly to the dock from where I stood. There was a large hornet's nest in the earth at the base of a fallen tree, and I would risk arousing their anger if I accidentally crushed it while walking by. I also knew that a grumpy old skunk was trundling its way back to its den 30 yards in the other direction, and that it would happily douse me with musk if I came anywhere close. I glanced over my shoulder, back toward the tower, casting out my supernatural senses. The island's awareness continued being that same constant presence I'd felt ever since leaving the tower. I considered going back, taking the old stairs this time to see what would happen, and immediately understood that there was a cottonmouth that made its home in a large crack on the 26th step. If I delayed the trip until later in the morning, the snake would be out on the stones, sunbathing to build up its body heat for the day. The dawn was approaching, and the sky had begun to lighten from the black to blue. I could see the tower standing, lonely and wounded, but unbowed, a black shape against the sky.
Demon Reach began to awaken to the first trills of songbirds. I walked down to the dock thoughtfully and walked out to where the water beetle was moored. "Molly!" I called. Feet pounded to the deck, and Molly burst up out of the ship's cabin. She flew across the distance between us and nearly tackled me into the water on the far side of the dock with the enthusiasm of her hug. Molly, the daughter of two ferocious warriors, was no whittling violet. My ribs creaked. "You came back," she said. "I was so worried. You came back." Hey, I need my rib cage, kid," I said, but I hugged her in return for a quiet moment before straightening. "Did it work?" she asked. "I'm not exactly sure. God, I need something to drink." We both boarded the water beetle, and I went below and removed a can of Coke from a cabinet. It was warm, but it was liquid, and more important, it was Coke. I guzzled the can's contents and tossed it into the trash bin. "How's Morgan?" I asked. "Awake," Morgan rumbled. "Where are we?" "Demon Reach," I said. "It's an island in Lake Michigan." Morgan grunted without emphasis. "Lucio told me about it." "Oh," I said. "Oh, good." "Miss Carpenter says you were attempting a sanctum invocation?" "Yeah." Morgan grunted. "You're here? It worked?" "I think so," I said. "I'm not sure." "Why not?" I shook my head. I thought that when a bond was formed with the land in question, it gave you access to its latent energy. "Yes." "Which meant that my magic would be subsidized by the island whenever I was here. I'd get a lot more bang for my buck, so to speak." "I thought that was all it did." "Generally," Morgan said. I saw him turn his head toward me in a dim cabin. "Why? What else has happened?" I took a deep breath and told him about the hidden trail, the hornets, and the skunk. Morgan sat up in his bunk by the time I got to the end. He leaned forward intently. "You sure you aren't mistaken? Confrontations with the genus loci can leave odd after effects behind." "Hang on," I said. I went back to the woods where I knew the hornets were and found their nest in short order. I retreated without crushing anything and went back to the boat. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." Morgan sank back onto the bunk as if he was being slowly deflated. "Merciful God," he said. "Intellectus." I felt my eyebrows go up. "You're kidding." Molly muttered a couple of candles to light so that we could see each other clearly. "Whatus?" she asked me. "Intellectus," I said. It's a mode of existence for a very few rare and powerful supernatural beings. Angels have it. I'm willing to bet Old Mother Winter and Mother Summer have it. For beings with intellectus, all reality exists in one piece, one place, one moment, and they can look at the whole thing. They don't seek or acquire knowledge, they just know things. They see the entire picture. "I'm not sure I get that," Molly said. Morgan spoke. "A being with intellectus does not understand, for example, how to derive a complex calculus equation, because it doesn't need the process. If you showed him a problem and an equation, he would simply understand it and skip straight to the answer without need to think through the logical stages of solving the problem." "It's omniscient?" Molly asked, her eyes wide. Morgan shook his head. "Not the same thing. The being with intellectus has to be focused on something via consideration in order to know it, whereas omniscient being knows all things at all times." "Isn't that pretty close?" Molly asked. "Intellectus wouldn't save you from an assassin's bullet if you didn't know someone wanted to kill you in the first place," I said. "To know it was coming, you'd first need to consider the question of whether or not an assassin might be lurking in a dark doorway or on top of a bell tower. Morgan grunted agreement. And since beings of intellectus so rarely understand broader ideas of cause and effect, they can be unlikely to realize that a given event might be an indicator of an upcoming assassination attempt. He turned to me. Though, that's a terrible metaphor, Dresden. Most beings like that are immortal. They'd be hard-pressed to notice bullets, much less feel threatened by them. So, Molly said, nodding, it might be able to know anything it wants to know, but it still has to ask the right questions, which is always harder than people think it is. Yeah, I said. Exactly. And now you've got this intellectus too? I shook my head. It's Demon Reach that has it. It stopped when I got out over the water. I tapped my finger against my forehead. I've got nothing to go on in here at the moment. I realized what I had said just as the last word left my mouth and glanced at Morgan. He lay on the bunk with his eyes closed, his mouth turned up in a small smile. Too easy. Molly fought not to grin. Morgan pushed his lips thoughtfully. Can the entity feed you any other information, Dresden? The identities of those behind Lafortier's murder, for example. I almost hit myself in the head with the heel of my hand. I should have thought of that already. I'll let you know, I said, and went back to the shore. Demon Reach sensed me at the same time as I perceived it, and the mutual sensation felt oddly like a handwave of acknowledgement. I frowned thoughtfully and looked around the island, concentrating on the issue of Lafortier's killer. Nothing sprang to mind. I tried half a dozen other things. Who was going to win the next World Series? Could I get the Blue Beetle out of impound yet? How many books had Mr. knocked off my shelves in my absence? Zip. So I thought about hornets' nests, and instantly felt certain that there were 32 of them spread around the 150 or so acres of the island, and that they were especially thick near the grove of apple trees on the island's north side. I went back to the boat and reported. Then it only exists upon the island itself, Morgan rumbled. Like any other genus loci, this one must be bloody ancient to have obtained the state of intellectus, even if it is limited to its own shorelines. Could be handed, I noted. Morgan didn't open his eyes, but bared his teeth in a wolf's smile. Certainly, if your foes were considerate enough to come all the way out here to meet you. Could be handy, I repeated firmly. Morgan arched an eyebrow and gave me a sharp look. Come on, Grasshopper, I said to Molly. Cast off the lines. You're about to learn how to drive the boat. By the time we made it back to the marina, the sun had risen. I coached Molly through the steps of bringing the water beetle safely to dock. Even though I wasn't exactly Horatio Hornblower myself, we managed to do it without breaking or sinking anything, which is what counts. I tied off the boat and went out the dock. Molly followed me anxiously to the rail. No problem here, Grasshopper. Take her out for about 10 minutes in a random direction that you choose. Then turn off the engine and wait. I'll signal you when I'm ready for you to pick me up. Are you sure we shouldn't stay together or something? She asked anxiously. I shook my head. Tracking spells can't home in too well over water, I said, and you'll know if someone's coming for you from a mile away, literally. Keep Morgan out there, and you should be as safe as anywhere. She frowned. What if he gets worse? Use your noggin, kid. Do whatever you think is most likely to keep you both alive. I stared, untying the line. I shouldn't be gone more than a couple of hours. If I don't show, the plan is the same as when I went up to the tower. Get yourself vanished. She swallowed. And Morgan? Make him as comfortable as you can and leave him. She stared at me for a minute. Me? If I get taken out, I don't think you'll be able to protect him, I said, as a matter of factly as I could. Or catch the real bad guy. So run like hell and let him look out for himself. I saw her think that over, and she smiled slightly. It would really humiliate him if he found himself under the protection of a girl, an apprentice, and a possible warlock to boot. I nodded. True. Molly pursed her lips thoughtfully. That might be worth staying for. Kid, I said, the smart thing for you to do, if it all goes sour, is to run. Smart, she said, but not right. I studied her soberly. You sure? Because there's a world of hurt waiting to fall. She nodded, her face pale. I'll try. And she would. I could see that in her eyes. She knew better than most exactly how dangerous such a thing would be for her, and it clearly terrified her. But she would try. Then if I'm taken off the board, see Murphy, I said. She knows everything I do about the case. Listen to her. She's smart, and you can trust her. Right, she said. I tossed the mooring lines back on board. Get a move on. I started walking down the dock behind me. Molly called, Harry, what signal are you going to use? You'll know it, I called back. I left the docks in search of the tool that could rip apart this tangled web of suspicion, murder, and lies. I found it in the marina's parking lot. A payphone. Laura answered on the second ring. Wraith? Dresden, I said. What have you got for me? Oh, to have straight lines like that more often, she said, her tone wearing. What makes you think I have anything for you? 'Cause I've got something to trade. Men generally seem to think that way. Most of them tend to overestimate the value of their wares. Pheromone loss, I said. Can we have the rest of this conversation above the waistline? She let out a rich, throaty laugh of hers, and my hormones sounded the charge. I ignored them. Stupid hormones. Very well, she said. It should interest you to know that the money deposited in Warden Morgan's account came from a dummy corporation called Windfill. Dummy organization? I asked. Who owns it? I do, she said calmly. I blinked. Since you're sharing this information, I take it that it happened without your knowledge? You are quite correct, she said. A Mr. Kevin Armis is the corporation's manager. He is the only one, other than myself, with the authority to move that much money around. I thought furiously. Whoever aced La Fortier hadn't just intended the council to implode. He, or they, had also gone to a lot of trouble to incite hostility within the White Court. Hell's bells. My imagination treated me to a prophetic nightmare. Morgan fights against the injustice of his frame. Hostilities erupt, creating strife between various fractions of wizards. The council eventually runs down the money trail, discovers Laura on the other end, and the council seizes upon the opportunity to unify the factions again. Thanks to a common enemy. Hostiles with the vampires start fresh. The Red Court sees the poorly coordinated council exposing itself in battle with the White Court and pounces, breaking the back of the council. And after that, it would be all over, but the heroic last stands. Hell's bells indeed. We were being played against one another, I said. That was my conclusion as well. A couple more pieces clicked into place. Madeline, I said. She got to this Armis guy and coerced him into betraying you? Yes, Laura hissed, barely surprised. Holy inhuman rage filled her level, controlled voice. When I catch up to her, I'm going to tear out her entrails with my bare hands. Which took care of my former problem. I shivered. I'd seen Laura in action, I could never decide if it had been one of the most beautifully terrifying things I'd ever seen, or if it was one of the most terrifyingly beautiful things I had ever seen. You might try looking at the Hotel Saxe, room 1233, I said. If I'm right, you're going to find Mr. Amram's body there. Madeline's working for someone, a man. She didn't say anything that would help identify him. You should also know that she has hired the services of a mercenary named Binder. Not exactly a rocket scientist, but smart enough to be dangerous. Laura was silent for a second. Then she said, "How did you learn this?" "Shockingly, with magic. I heard her speak to someone in the room with her. Then she got back on the phone and said, if Armus is dead, Madeline has tied up the loose ends in her plan. It will be impossible to provide credible evidence that I did not in fact pay for Lafortier's murder. Yeah, that's why she did it." I heard her make a displeased sound, but it was still ladylike. "What do we intend to do about this, Harry? Do you have a nice dress?" "Pardon?" I found myself grinning maniacally. "I'm throwing a party." Thomas's phone rang 4 times before the connection opened. There was a moment of silence. Then Thomas spoke, his voice raw and ragged. "Harry?" My heart just about stopped beating to hear my brother's voice. "Thomas, how's it going?" "Oh," he rasped. "I'm just hanging around." I've seen Thomas in agony before. He sounded exactly like this. The phone emitted random noises, and then the yowl, purring voice of the skinwalker came over the line. "He is here. He is alive for now. Give me the doomed warrior." "Okay," I said. There was a moment of silent consternation from the far end of the line. "Bring him to me," it said. "Nah, that isn't going to happen." "What?" "You're coming to me." "Do you wish me to end his life this instant?" "Frankly, Shaggy, I don't give a damn," I said, forcing boredom into my voice. "It'd be nice to be able to return one of the vampires to his own. Give myself a marker I can call in someday. But I don't need it." I paused. "You, on the other hand, need Thomas to be alive if you expect me to trade Morgan for him. So that's how it's going down. At dusk, you will be contacted on this phone. You will be told where our meeting place. When you arrive, you will show me the vampire, alive and well. And when he is returned to me, you will take Morgan without contest." "I am not some mortal scum you can command, mageling," Shagnasty seethed. "No, you're an immortal scum." "You blind, flesh-feeding worm," Shagnasty snarled. "Who are you to speak to me so?" "The worm who's got what you need," I said. "Dusk, keep the phone handy." I hung up on him. My heart hammered against my chest and cold sweat broke out over my upper body. I felt myself shaking with terror for Thomas, with weariness, with reaction to the conversation with Shagnasty. I leaned my aching head against the earpiece of the phone and hoped that I hadn't just ended my brother's life. One more call. The White Council of Wizards uses telephone communications like everyone else, albeit with a lot more service calls. I gave headquarters a ring, gave them the countersign to the security challenge, and got patched through to one of the administrative assistants, an earnest young woman not quite finished with her apprenticeship. "I need to get a message to every member of the senior council," I told her. "Very well, sir," she said. "What's the message?" "Get this verbatim, okay?" "Yes, sir." I cleared my throat and spoke. "Be advised that I have been sheltering Warden Donald Morgan from discovery and capture for the past 2 days. An informant has come to me with details of how Warden Morgan was framed for the murder of senior council member Lafortier. Warden Morgan is innocent, and what's more, I can prove it. I'm willing to meet you tonight on the uncharted island in Lake Michigan, east of Chicago at sundown. The informant will be present and will produce testimony that will vindicate Worgen Morgan and identify the true culprit of the crime. Let me be perfectly clear. I will not surrender Worgen Morgan to the alleged justice of the council. Come in peace and we will work things out. But should you come to me looking for a fight, be assured that I will oblige you. The assistant had started making choking sounds after the very first sentence. Then sign it, Harry Dresden, I said. Yes, sir. Shall I read it back to you? Please. She did. I heard sounds of movement in the background around her, but as she read aloud, all of those sounds died into silence. When she finished, she asked in a rather small, squeaky voice, Do I have that down correctly, sir? Murmurs burst out of the background of their phone, excited and low. Yeah, I told her. Perfect.
That's kind of scary. Well, thank you guys for listening to Chapter 37. It's not quite over. We still have quite a few more chapters left. And it's sounding like everything's starting to wrap up. So what's going to happen to complicate the situation? Is Dresden going to get his brother back? Is he going to give Warden to this shag nasty skinwalker? Or is he going to end up doing something else? What's going to happen with the skinwalker? I mean, I guess the skinwalker's got information on who actually killed La Fortier. There's so many questions. Do you guys want to speculate the answers down below? Again, thank you guys so very much for listening today, and you have a wonderful, wonderful, and blessed day.